Hi, it's Roger Hamilton here with a very special welcome to you as a City Circle leader and organizer of our Entrepreneur Social in your city. And in this video, I'm going to give you a very simple tip on how to make sure that you are making the absolute most of this position and making the absolute most of your position within the entrepreneur movement. And it's really one thing, which is count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Every time I step up onto stage, every time I get in front of a group, I count to 5, and every one of those numbers means something really super important. And as I go through each of these, have a thought about this every time that you're starting one of your entrepreneur socials, every time you're getting with your team, every time you wake up in the morning, count to 5. Number 1 is you. Number 1 is making sure that you are really aware of why you're doing this role, why you've stepped up to be a city leader. My personal belief is that every city leader that stepped up around the world really understands the power of community and really understands the power of being the lighthouse, which means in one way for everyone within your community, everyone local, they're able to see you as a connection to the rest of the world. Just like a boat that's actually leaving a port sees the lighthouse as the last beacon before they leave the shore. And at the same time, for anyone coming from around the world into your city, they also see you as the lighthouse, as a beacon, as a place where they can actually call home, as a place where they can connect to everything local within that area as well, as effectively a safe harbor within the amazing changes that we're seeing all around the world. So by you thinking of yourself as the lighthouse, that's your role as a city leader, to be one of many lighthouses around the world that are connecting the local community with the global community. And that leads me to number 2. Number 2 are exactly those two things. Your local community and the global community are the connectors which allow those people who are currently entrepreneurs in your city to be able to actually connect up with you, come along to your entrepreneur socials, get connected to your team, and realize just how by connecting with everyone that you're connected to within your city that shows up for an entrepreneur social, that's part of this community, what they're really doing is they're opening up a gateway to an entirely new universe, right? For every one person that realizes that it's actually easier today to build a global business than to build a local one, the one thing that they're actually missing is connection. You provide that connection as the city leader. This is part of our vision as we got started, was really to say, what could we do to make sure that we aren't all just getting online and using our smartphones or our laptops as our window to the world? You know, what could we do to actually create a real experience that people could have in every local city? That's the role of every city leader, where you've actually got, on the one hand, your entrepreneur social, which allows people to actually meet up with amazing entrepreneurs, and at the same time, the ability to then connect in things outside of the entrepreneur social. So things that you organize in your own city, whether they happen to be get-togethers, whether they happen to be just coffees, the things that you organize to do with us, whether it's coming to one of our retreats, coming out to one of the events, running one of the virtual summits for the Fast Forward coming up. These are all those different elements which give people touch points, which are real, which are human, which are beyond what we see in the screen. And then obviously the opposite is also true. People from around the world want to get connected up to people in your city. And we're seeing more and more when we run our Fast Forwards, when I travel around the world, that we're seeing people saying, hey Roger, who can you connect me with in Los Angeles? Who can you connect me with in London? This is now your role, that you actually become the person that I'd want to connect with first within your city, to be able to actually connect those who are looking to come in and do business, or to give or just to collaborate with people within your city, a really simple, easy way to actually step in through the connections that you have as well. So that fundamental point of number 2 being that when you've got those two connectors, it allows you to be the source of flow. By connecting those two together, every day you can be thinking, what could I be doing to support someone within my city to connect them to someone around the world? And what can I also do with those around the world that I can connect to people in my city? This is not just for you to do all of it, it's for you to have your team be thinking about this on a day-to-day basis. And this leads us to number 3. Number 3 is what happens at the events. Number 3 is what happens when you meet up with your team. It is the 3 steps to flow. And the 3 steps to flow, as you know, is to show up, step up, and give back. The show up part, as Woody Allen says, 80% of all success is showing up, is about when we actually show up at an event, when we show up at something like an entrepreneur social. That one step of doing that opens up all these different opportunities and connections, provided that's an event that we actually get some real result in, which is what I'm going to get to in a second. But that whole point that when you actually show up, there's an accountability and responsibility for each person who shows up to then add to the community. this is your role within your team, within the person you've got who's actually running the community side, the person you've got who's going to be running the speaker side, the marketing side, that they're all thinking, how do we really make the most for each person showing up to make that sure that they're adding value to the community, and at the same time people in the community are adding value back to them as well. And that includes the speaker as well. And that leads to the second part, which is stepping up. When someone actually shows up, they're actually there at your community event, at your Entrepreneur Social, or they're on the phone with you as well. The step up is about what are they doing to now accelerate the gear, right? What are they doing now that they're actually showing up to really make the most of it? So by you actually being able to motivate people when they do show up to realize that there's things that the speaker's speaking about that they can actually apply directly within their job in the Q&A section, where you're actually asking for different people, whatever the question is that's going to allow them to create the most actionable result from actually being there, and then getting the feedback from the speaker, actually organizing the speaker themselves to be sharing about how they're really making an impact in the world and what are the steps they took to get started, so that they themselves are also thinking about the things that they can share, which will be the most actionable steps for people to take. That step up is all about being able to step up to a different level, to be able to change your gear and change your paradigm. And that leads to the third part, which is give back. Every one of the entrepreneur socials that are set up so far, which is a social for social entrepreneurs, every one of them so far has had a really great vibe from the city leaders that already have started co-creating the best ways to do this, where they're finding out ways to do things like, for example, tickets for giving, talking about causes that are actually taking place within their city that people can get behind, really highlighting for every one of the speakers who come on board that it isn't simply a matter of having a business that's connected to a charity. You could have a business that's actually making an impact within any one of the 17 global goals by just having the customers getting motivated to do things, or just by you yourself educating and being linked to the education side, or helping the environment, and focusing on the environment side simply through the products that you have. So understanding that social entrepreneurship is about being able to do good and do well at the same time. The most fundamental part about this is that you get to be able to show that through the giving back side, that is when the river flows and it's about as much about what you're giving as what you're getting, then everyone then benefits from that flow as well. And the most important thing always to remember is that there's a limit to what you can get. There's no limit to what you can give. That leads to number 4. If number 3 are the 3 steps to flow, then number 4 are the 4 steps to grow. And every time that someone shows up at one of the entrepreneur socials, every time you're on the phone with someone or meeting someone for a coffee or having a conversation with someone, always be thinking about the fact that entrepreneurs grow in 4 different ways. The first way is growing in what we know, which is the knowledge we have. What did we learn that we didn't know before? Number 2 is knowing that we also grow not just by who we know or what we know, but who we know as well. So this is about the connections that you can actually make. Every time they show up at an event, every time they show up at one of the socials, if you were to actually ask people, well, what's the biggest thing you learned that you could actually action? That's all about what you know. Who can you connect with, or who can I help you connect with, is all about the who you know. This is about your intellectual capital and your social capital, which together, once you grow those, which takes nothing but your time and effort, that you then are able to build your financial capital. And then outside of those 2, there's obviously the showing up, number 3, which where are you showing up? What event are you going to go to next? Are you going to come back next month? Do you want to meet up in a different format, or do you have a group yourself that we can get connected into as well? Do you want to come to one of the retreats around the world, or on one of the global events that we run? This whole concept of showing up is about an ongoing journey. It's not just showing up once and then thinking you've got it fixed. And then the final part is what action are you taking? What opportunities are you taking as well? 4 steps. Number 1 is what you know. Number 2 is who you know. Number 3 is where you're showing up. And number 4 is what you're doing about it. Those opportunities, we're now seeing different entrepreneur socials integrating in the opportunity knocks that we do at Fast Forward, which is a brilliant way to allow you to be able to actually not just have a great speaker that inspires everyone and gives people action, but then have facilitated networking where everyone can, before they even get to the actual social, prepare their opportunity knocks. We're bringing this all onto Genius U to make life even easier, but give you the opportunity to actually highlight some of those opportunities and getting people then working with each other on the things where they can actually be of most service to each other as well. So remember that number 4 is if people always are finding they're not just getting to flow, but they're also growing, they're always going to come back again and again, and your community is going to grow more and more vibrant with more and more success stories. And that leads to the final number 5. And number 5 is the spiral staircase. It's the 5 questions, which are the 5 questions that you know very well within our network. It's the spiral staircase up the lighthouse, which is the why, the what, the who, the when, and the how. Always whenever you're thinking about this as your team, always when you're meeting someone new, always start with the why. Why are we here? Why are we doing this? Because every one of us has a different personal why, and we, with the whole global entrepreneur movement, have a global why as well. So you're connecting the two together, and that creates the water energy, that creates the flow, which then leads to the what. Whenever you're meeting with someone and you're finding out why, what's the thing that actually drives them most? Why are they there? Is it a problem they're trying to solve? Is it a new mission that they've got? The what is the way that you can then help them in the most specific way. You know, what's the big thing, the one thing that could help you most right now? It might be something they need to learn. It might be something, someone they need to connect with. But once you know that what, then you can really be of greater service. Then it's always about the who. Who can you connect them with? Who's going to actually be able to help them with that what? When's it going to happen? What's their time frame? How can you make sure it sinks in together? And then how are they going to take action off the back of that as well? Those 5 elements allow you to always get into flow, always be able to add value to those around you. It's something that every one of your team can do. And frankly, everyone who comes and joins your community within your city is something that they can do as well. So every time you start one of your events, every time you get with your team, every time you wake up in the morning, ask yourself, am I saying number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Am I counting to 5? And am I remembering what each of those 5 actually mean? And from there, as it says in the Tao and the Tao Te Ching, that it starts from 1, it goes to 2, 2 becomes 3, 3 becomes 5, and from 5 you have infinity. Our ability to actually create the most amazing opportunities out there starts with us, ends with us, and allows us to have every opportunity in between. So I'm really looking forward to working together with you and all the other city leaders that are going to be connecting with you as well. You're now part of a global family. We are fundamentally the core group that are actually lighting up cities around the world, allowing those who want to be part of the entrepreneur movement to connect with each other and to call this home.